Wouter, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you are one of the heavyweights in decentralized finance in the crypto world. I want you to tell us about what your company, DeFi Technologies, is doing in terms of developing decentralized finance solutions, and talk about your background as you lay this open for us today.
Yes, thank you. I think what's relevant for the discussion today is before founding DeFi Technologies, I founded the company SecFi, for which I raised $600 million. And our strategy there was to help people that work for the likes of Uber, Pinterest, and etc. to get financing against their private company stock. And we kind of pioneered that concept. But we did that in a completely centralized finance way. So we have a broker dealer, we pay brokers, intermediaries, lawyers, trustees, you name it, everything in the old financial world. And it made sense because 4 years ago, we didn't have some of the technologies that we have today. But in every step of our transaction, we paid for all these intermediaries for their services, whether it's providing trust or otherwise. In a decentralized finance way, we have an opportunity now for actors to transact with each other without the need for intermediaries. So I can transact with you, Dave, without the need for like a broker or a bank or a trusted intermediary, and without paying them for all these fees. And with DeFi Technologies, effectively what we're doing is we're giving public markets investors exposure to this growing space that is rapidly evolving into the next financial innovation that I see in the market.
Would you give us an example of a transaction that I might use using your solutions?
Yeah, so for example, there's a protocol called FTX, which is a derivatives platform. So if you want to invest in Coinbase, for example, at the moment, you can only do so by investing into the private market, maybe buying shares or buying in their private rounds. On FTX, you have people selling you Coinbase shares ahead of the IPO that you can already transact with before the IPO happens. So you and me could transact. If I have some Coinbase shares that I want to sell, I could sell them directly to you through the FTX platform. And that's an example of a decentralized solution that wasn't available before.
How big is this market opportunity?
So I think we're talking about, so currently DeFi grew from essentially like 2 billion last year to $40 billion market today. But DeFi has the potential to disrupt the entire financial industry. I mean, we're talking around trillions and trillions of dollars. You're talking about prediction markets, asset management, lending, credit, custodianship. You have all these markets that have decentralized application. I think we're just really at the beginning of the market development.
You just announced the launch of a new product called DeFi Governance. What makes this product unique? How big's the market opportunity for that? Who would be your customers?
So when you think about DeFi, so it's not run by a central authority like we already mentioned before, and you don't really have intermediaries, but someone has to decide like how the platform is run, is operated. So this is done on a basis what we call consensus. So instead of having one central authority, you have a number of different parties that basically determine if something can happen. Take, for example, what happened in GameStop. You can have flat unilaterally decide we're going to stop trading on GameStop. If you had, for example, a trading platform that is run in a decentralized way, you would have a consensus of maybe 20 different actors, of which the majority need to say, no, we agree this is the right decision. So with DeFi governance, essentially what we're doing is we're providing these governance service as one of these sort of actors that is trying to decide how something should be run, and we vote on these sort of opportunities. And that market, every single protocol that is out there in DeFi, so currently, like I mentioned, that's at 40 billion, would need to have some kind of consensus. So that market is gigantic and also still growing.
Well, I want you to explain the governance part of it. Are you basically verifying that a transaction happened and is real?
Correct. You would help verify some of the transactions, determine which ones are valid and which ones are not. You would vote on certain proposals around code changes, about features, and the likes, and you help run like one of the servers of the network, basically that determines how the network is being run.
When you say you vote, how does that work?
So every member, this is the beauty about decentralized finance. So every member, every participant in the protocol can submit proposals. So they may want to have a lending protocol run differently. They may want to have to run the trading differently, and that proposal then gets voted on. So you can vote electronically. It's all happening on the blockchain, and everyone can see transparently who voted for what and who brought forward which proposal. And that's kind of like what we're doing. And as a public company, we are, of course, regulated. We have a board of directors. We have governance. So we're uniquely positioned to kind of grow this into a really big business.
And when they vote, is it a majority wins? How does that work?
So it depends a little on the protocol, but the standard is usually like 2/3 need to vote for a proposal in favor and until it gets passed. But you could have protocols that work differently. So if you have, let's say, it's just a 51%, maybe people also trust that protocol a little bit more. So when people invest into these protocols, they also look at the governance and how that's being run.
Now, talk to us about your business model. Right now, you have basically 4 business lines. One of them is the DeFi governance. You have a business line for exchange-traded notes. You have investments that you make in other startups in this space. And then you have a Treasury component as well. So briefly, walk us through the business model. Let's start with how you make money on this DeFi governance, and then let's talk about how you make money on the exchange-traded notes.
Yeah, so for the governance, for every transaction that happens in a network, we effectively get a transaction fee. So for every network, this is slightly different. For the really big networks, this can run up into the millions per month. For, let's say, like a big Ethereum node or some others. For some of the DeFi protocols that are coming up, there's a lot of incentives for these nodes in the beginning to have bigger rewards, but that is then inflated over time. So that's kind of how we make money there. So the bigger the protocol, the more transactions happen, the more money that you make. On our ETM business, what we're effectively doing is we're giving public market investors access to DeFi without having gone through the complexities of actually creating like a crypto account, wallets, two-factor authentication, like all the things that they get nervous about, and they can simply buy our crypto products through their brokerage account. So we have a variety of different ways in which we make money. The most obvious one is on let's say our basket or more complicated products that are sort of a bit managed. There's like a management fee. But on most of our products, we actually take a Robinhood model where people do not pay management fee or commission for our products, but instead we use decentralized finance in the back end to gain yield on the AUM effectively that we manage, and we pass some of that back to the users. And that is a very innovative way, a friendly way for people to get exposure.
So instead of my opening an account on Coinbase and buying crypto and maybe losing my passcode or Coinbase getting hacked and I lose all my money, they can basically buy a certificate from you, an exchange-traded note, and that's pegged to, say, Bitcoin. And so it gives them some security that you would not have in simply setting up an account with a Coinbase. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. And it also allows a lot of institutions, also private banks, to offer this to their clients who are not allowed to deal with unregulated exchanges such as Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, and etc. So we are basically the bridge between sort of the crypto world and the traditional finance world, and we make that process really, really seamless.
So, Wouter, if I understand this correctly, then you can lend out these assets, the Bitcoin, the Ethereum. You can make about 5% annually on that. I know your goal, you told me, is to grow your assets to about $1 billion, which would give you about $50 million in revenue. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And where it gets even more interesting is when you actually look at this from a DeFi perspective. So DeFi has people that are long-term holders of these protocols, of these coins, and they have a process called staking. And staking is really the same as like getting paid an interest for holding on to the asset. And here's where you really get into the realm of 10, 20, even 30% sort of yield on actually holding this. And that's where we can supercharge our returns. And obviously, some of that has to go back to the users. but it's just a way for us to gain more yield without having to charge management fee on the product.
So this is a very unique product. Is anyone besides you offering this this security certificate, I'll call it?
Yeah, there are people. You have, of course, like Grayscale is really big with their Bitcoin trust. It's not really like an ETN; it's more like a sort of trust. There are people that want to launch ETFs in the United States. That hasn't been approved yet, but there's various people looking at this. But in terms of like the DeFi, the DeFi space, we haven't really seen a lot of development, and also not in sort of the way that we're looking at it in a sort of zero management fee manner.
Your third business line is you invest in startup DeFi companies. I think your assets there are about $2 million now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So we invest in protocols that we really believe in. So it's like a diversified portfolio that we initially did and that we announced. And then we also have some strategic investment in seed stage decentralized finance platform where we see either value for some of our other businesses, or we just see long term that the market really needs this, and we want to support these companies in their growth.
And then your fourth business line today is the Treasury Component. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, so on the Treasury side, it's effectively we're living in basically a zero yield or sometimes negative yield environment. So a lot of Treasury departments or even corporates, they don't know what to do with, for example, their USD or their euros or their Swiss francs. So they're looking for yield or for interesting product, but there's nothing out there. Well, fortunately, decentralized finance has a real need for United States dollar. So they need liquidity in a network in order for it to work. And we've seen several sort of stable coins pop up, such as USDC and USDT, that effectively fulfill this. But there's a huge need from these networks to have that, and that's why often you can get up to 4 or 5% on just holding USDC, which is pegged to the dollar.
What is USDC? What is that? A coin? What is that?
Yeah, it's a stable coin. So a stable coin is effectively pegged by the dollar, which means that if you purchase one USDC, they guarantee the issuer guarantees that is backed by $1 in a bank account of an American bank, and therefore you don't have asset volatility. If you're a Treasury department, unless you're Elon Musk, you might not want to buy like Bitcoin and have that be volatile on your balance sheet. So Treasury department tend to be very conservative when it comes to their investments, if you will.
But USDC is a cryptocurrency?
It is a cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Correct.
And it's pegged to the dollar. Okay, how do you make money on this?
So effectively, when you get yield of 4 or 5%, right, there will be like a sort of spread that we can take. So majority will go to the investor, but we'll take our fee sort of on that side rather than having like a management fee. So that's like the way that we sort of make money for providing the services, issuing the certificate, doing the trading, and etc.
When we think about your company, and here at Redship, we'll explain to the investment community that it's really about your management team and the people involved here. That's really what you're buying into. And I want you to give us some color on the background of the people involved. For example, Anthony Pompliano, who's the #1 crypto expert in the world with millions of followers, is an advisor to your company. So talk to us about some of your key players and these relationships that sort of brought this company together.
Yeah, so Anthony came on board. Was a long-term friend and co-investor. He's invested over 100 million in Bitcoins. Very vocal on Twitter, as we all know, and has a huge network for to support our investing business, our venture business, so to speak, but also to bring on board sort of the PR and investors. But next to sort of Anthony, we brought on board several sort of other people. My co-founder is a guy called Olivier Newton. And he's the founder of Hive Blockchain Technologies, which was the first public mining company back when no one really sort of knew about Bitcoin in the public markets. And he founded that company, which is now trading at the 2 billion market cap, and he's raised over 800 million in total. He decided back in the day when no one had access to crypto, he said, well, I just need to tell people just buy the stock. And that's exactly what DeFi is. That's why it's such a perfect match. So he's my co-founder and partner in this business. We have also a guy I brought on board, my long-term good friend, Thibaut Seyrol, who is the founder of Snowflake EMEA. Snowflake, as we all know, is one of the biggest software IPOs in history. And he built that from zero to all the way to the IPO. And he's bringing a lot of aboard, a lot of corporates and some of the people there.
And he's on your advisory board?
He's on my advisory board and is helping me almost on a day-to-day basis when I need to know something about these corporates, for example, the Treasury business.
So your co-founder founded a company, Hive, that's now a $2 billion market cap company. He raised $800 million. You raised $600 million for a company called SecFi. You have Anthony Pompliano, and then you have the founder of Snowflake, which was the biggest software IPO ever. Is that what I heard you say?
I think definitely last year. I'm not sure about ever, but I think that has been said. Yeah, I haven't verified that. We also have a team based out of San Francisco that's bringing a lot of the deal flow, and this is also key for any sort of retail investor. You just don't have access. Silicon Valley is not democratic. It's the select few have access to these opportunities. So I brought on board one of our venture investors called CK, who's doing a lot of that work in Silicon Valley. So we're really sort of a spread out global team. That's why we've access to so many of these opportunities.
And you recently raised $10 million. And how will you deploy that capital?
Yeah, so part of that goes towards our ETN strategy. With our products there's a liquidity need that you have. We have a lot of new products that we're thinking about launching, but you do need to have the liquidity to do the trading, to do the hedging. So there's some need there. And then we have, of course, also our governance product that we're just building out. We just did the first deal that we announced with Shift Network. We're very excited by it, but we need to run some of the infrastructure for that. And then there's also just working capital to build out some of these other business lines that we discussed earlier.
And I want to disclose that I did take a position in the company before we signed you as a client. And I built this position based on not really understanding everything that you're doing, but based on the team that you put together, in particular, your background and the co-founder's background. Because in these smaller cap companies, obviously, we are betting on the management team, and you have a world-class, extraordinary team that you've put together. I also mentioned, you've got your degree from Cambridge University. What's your degree in from Cambridge?
I have one in computer science and then also technology policy.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Wouter.
My pleasure.